Well, welcome to Borders Rugby Radio and our special preview of the Starrett Jedforest Sevens, which is happening tomorrow at Riverside Park. It's the 119th playing of the Jed Sevens, and our live coverage of the event, which is sponsored by the Mortgage Hub in Galashiels, will begin at 3 o'clock, running through to the final. Now, the event itself kicks off at 1:30 with the first tie in round one. And in today's programme, I'm joined by Clancy, who'll be commentating tomorrow for us. It's a knockout competition rather than the pool format. And it's interesting because the earlier rounds have mainly been pools, but the last three rounds from Earlston to Selkirk and Jed tomorrow, it's knockout rugby. And that gives a completely different dynamic to the whole competition. So Dale, welcome to the programme, first of all. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yes, it has been a while. I've been in a bit of a hiatus for the last month or so, but it's good to be back, and I'm looking forward to Jed Sevens.
Absolutely. And where do you stand on the kind of the pool and the knockout?
I like the knockout. I'm a bit of a traditionalist with sevens, and I do like the excitement that a really good knockout competition gives you. I think sometimes in the Kings of the Sevens, especially, if you look at Melrose as the main one, the knockout doesn't always work until it gets to the latter rounds, but I feel that with a really good draw, you get some really good ties. Now, obviously, you've got 8 ties in the first round. I think if you get 3 or 4 really good ties in the first round, it sets up for a really good tournament because the best teams do progress. But there is the argument, you do have teams such as, I've had a conversation with a guy from Peebles, and he has spoken about the fact that they travel far to perhaps get knocked out in the first round and only get one game of rugby, which is fine, and I get that, but these elite teams and these better teams who are going to go through the later rounds, I think they need knockout rugby. I think that's what it is. It's if Jed played Selkirk in the opening round of a tournament, it would be brilliant because you know that you've got a big crunch tie first off, and it allows everybody else the chance as well because there'll be so much exertion in that first tie that that it gives other teams a chance as well. There might be a surprise in there. So I think there's so much excitement and surprise about knockout rugby as opposed to pools. I think for me, it takes a bit of getting into if it's a pool system, but I do see the benefits of it as well.
Yes, because World Rugby, they've adopted that for quite some time now, and it means you've got a minimum of 3 games in those pools and 24 teams or something. It's a lot of teams. But as you said, Aberdeen University that came down from Aberdeen to play 14 minutes of rugby at the Selkirk Sevens last week.
Yeah, and there is always that, but I think the good thing about the Kings of the Sevens is that there is such a big atmosphere around all the grounds. I think Earlston Sevens, one of the smallest clubs that we have in the Borders, perhaps one of the best of the rest in terms of the Sevens tournaments because it's always well attended, well supported. I think they probably go through a few kegs of beer as well, so it's always a good event. And I think I don't think we can look at World Rugby and think that they do pools of 4 because there's teams flying from all over the world, and it's such a big event and well supported and well funded. We've got quite a local region most of the time. We do have the links. Obviously, Aberdeen Uni, they've got the link with Gregor Nicol from Selkirk. They've got that tie-in. So it's a big event. These uni students, I'm sure they don't mind getting knocked out in the first round and having a big day drinking beer. I don't think they're that bothered. But I do like the knockout rugby. I think the draws sometimes do raise a few eyebrows, but that's it's always been an issue. And even sometimes with a legitimate draw, it throws up a few surprises as well. But I think with a good knockout draw, it's the best way for the Kings of the Sevens, in my opinion.
In previous years, of course, we've had this problem with the teams pulling out, sometimes at very short notice. We've sometimes had President 7-1, President 7-2 and President 7-3, I think, on one occasion. So obviously, if you've got a pool system, you're looking at 12 teams. It's a lot easier to cover, whereas 16 teams is not.
Yeah, there's obviously issues either way. I remember being at Hoyk Sevens, I believe, and it was Edinburgh Accies and another team, can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but they played each other twice and it was pretty much an aggregate score. Now, it was boring because the first game was an absolute walkover, so the second game was almost a formality. It allowed the team to get a bit of rugby into their legs, but sometimes it is a bit disappointing that there's teams can't commit. It's been a long season this year. It has been really, really long. I think all the teams are really glad to see the back of it. Langham being one team who were playing 15s last week and missed out with promotion by a point. They've still got 7s this weekend as well at Jed, and I think they'll be looking at the fact that they can go to just draw a line under it. But they're still committing, which is great to see. Going back to my old team of Peebles, they've pulled out a few tournaments, and for me it's disappointing because I know the amount of players that they've got there, and sometimes it is hard to commit because you've got players who are volunteering to play rugby against teams that they're going down and they know they're going to get cuffed, So it's difficult to try and get that, that energy and the will to attend. But sometimes it's not the decision of the players. Sometimes it's the decision of people who think it's in the best interest of the clubs. But us border clubs, we need to support border clubs. So if you're inviting teams to your tournament and they attend and they do well and they bring support and they put money over your bar, I think it's only the best thing that you return the favour, because the Borders Sevens is unique in our country. It's the best Sevens tournament. They've tried to copy it elsewhere in the country, and it's not worked because we have the history. And I think we're all right usually with teams not pulling out. It's usually some city teams, but you feel now with the length of this season, you could probably just maybe brush this under the carpet and hopefully go again next year.
It was interesting because I was talking to David Nicholl, the Sevens convener at Selkirk, and one of the questions I put to him was, why don't teams outside of the borders have their own Sevens tournament? Yes, we know there's the tradition there, but certainly as a money spinner for the club, in these times where you need money through the gates, people through the gates and behind the bar, it seems to be a no-brainer. But not everyone thinks that.
No, definitely not. Well, they tried. I think it was the Legacy Sevens when Sevens really started taking a real trajectory upwards, when a lot of the national team started looking at it a little bit more seriously as well. They looked at the Kings of the Sevens, and all of a sudden we had the Youngs, we had Hartness, we had Lee Jones, we've had Darcy Graham. We've had all these players from the borders go through and represent our country at Sevens, and they tried to replicate it in the Central Belt, and it just didn't work. And you look at probably the next biggest Sevens tournament that I can think of is the Edinburgh City Sevens, which ironically is organised by a guy from the Borders. So, it's a bit different, I think, in different areas of the country. The Borders is such a, it's steeped in rugby history, especially with Sevens. We've got Melrose on our doorstep, and you could, you're 30 minutes in a car and you go to all the clubs round about, and it's such a close-knit area in terms of rugby. We don't want to see anybody else in the Borders do well, but we don't want to see them do badly either. And I think other places in the country, it's a little bit more, they've got a little bit more suave and swagger, and I think they're a little bit more self-invested, and I think that's why it doesn't work. I don't think they get the buy-in. So when you do have Edinburgh City Sevens, you've got invitational teams, which I think work great for an event like that, but I just don't think the clubs can really buy into it and commit to something, to get something so historic. Our Kings of the Sevens has been going for decades, and it's such a huge event in our social calendar as well, in terms of we've got our festivals, but we've also got the Seven Seasons. I don't think the cities have the same lifestyle as we do down here, and I think that's probably why it doesn't work as well.
Let's talk about tomorrow, because it's Jedforest Sevens. They're the Kings of the Sevens, so the pressure totally off them. But as Lewis Young said to me at the end of the Selkirk tournament, he said, if you think we're going to just accept the Kings of the Sevens trophy and not bother about our own one, you've got another thing coming. They are out to win their own tournament tomorrow. Yeah,
definitely. I think when we watched Melrose Sevens, I know we had some tournaments at the beginning of the season, but looking back to Melrose Sevens, Jed performed very, very well. I thought their structure, the way that they played Sevens was great. And then I looked at Selkirk and I seen them, and I thought that they had a really good style of play, which will help with Scott White being in there. So, they attacked the tournament really well. Good squad, good structure. And then Melrose played well. And then you started to look at that. I went, Jed and Selkirk will be the two teams. They will contest this season's Kings of the Sevens. Melrose have had a say in that as well, because they have performed really well. But it's a bit of a balance. Jed have so much experience. The Youngs, Buckley, they've got the experience of the likes of Eurston in there as well.
Gary Munro. I mean, everyone in that squad is a seasoned Sevens player.
Yeah, and I think that's what they benefit from. I think if they were to play, let's say, for example, I'm going to pick Peebles because it's the easy option, but if they were to play Peebles in the first round, they could mix their team up and still be very, very strong. And I think that's the depth that they've got. They've got a bit of pace, they've got power, and they've got that great balance in that squad. The likes of Don Buckley, you look at him, he's not the quickest over the ground anymore, but the experience that he has, he knows how to play rugby. He knows where the holes are, he knows how to move defenders, he's got a good skill set. So all he needs to do is draw the players in. There was a run at Melrose that he made, and it was just typical Don Buckley. He was scampering about, it looked like he didn't know where he wanted to go, and all of a sudden the afterburners came on through the gap, two players come in, offload to a speedster, getting behind that line, and then, the Youngs, they love holding wide, coming in centre field and running off the shoulder, and they've just got that balance. But you look at Selkirk, I have to mention them because Aaron McComb's been out for a long, long time. Ryan Cottrell as well has been out for a while, and they came back at Melrose and they looked like they had never missed a step. And from another point, these are the sort of players that you should be looking at to thinking they should be stepping up to semi-professional rugby. But from a Sevens point of view, they are the beating heart of teams like Selkirk. Selkirk are a small team. They've probably not got the size and the bulk that Jed do, but the pace and the skill set that they have. On any given day, they can beat each other. But obviously, I think Jed at the moment they start as favourites. But the teams like Selkirk, Melrose, Gala even as well. Kelso have got a good 7. These teams, just depending on the way the draw works out, it'll be interesting. And Curry as well. Curry, depending on what team they bring down, there's a lot of good teams going down to Jed.
And of course, Gala, good team as well, but of course have arrived late to the party because of their 15s commitments, which has happened to the likes of Jed and Melrose in the past. This year it was Gala's unfortunate because they've got some great players in there. Rex Jeffrey unfortunately injured his arm at the weekend at Selkirk, but I mean young Kerr Johnston, that a player that you've identified who's come through the ranks, and he just slots in very, very comfortably there.
Yeah, he's a really natural rugby player. Remember watching him at the Damhealth Stadium, and Robin Purdy had been speaking about him before, and when I watched him, I was blown away by his maturity, his balance, his speed, his power. He does look like an internationalist in the making. If you're going to try and blow a bit of smoke up his arse, to be fair, but he's just got that build. And he's also got the drive as well. He's a rugby guy. I've checked on the Borders Rugby TV Instagram, and he's always looking for the links for the games and stuff like that. So he's obviously wanting to analyse his game. He wants to get better and he wants to improve. And I think that's the mark of somebody who's going to go far. And this is where the Sevens is great. This is where the Sevens starts to showcase the best talent that we've got coming through. And perhaps Kerr Johnson is going to be the player this year that we will look back on in a few years' time. As we all know, Stuart Hogg was, it was at Berwick Sevens, and then he's shone up for Hoyk in years gone by. This could be the year that we go, Kerr Johnson was the man that stood up. But Gala have been architects of their own downfall because they've been so successful in the 15s league, and it's disappointing, but then that's just the way that, I said there's too much rugby. That's another thing, because they've had to pull out the Border League where they could have been successful as well. So, they'll be going down to Jed as well, hoping to put in a good performance and perhaps, upset the apple cart a bit and get the trophy.
Well, we mentioned Selkirk earlier, and Scott White, of course, putting his influence on the team. And just before the Selkirk Sevens, I had a little chat with him, and this is what he had to say.
Oh, look, I mean, there's a great amount belief in the squad, I think, and you could say it's the monkey off the back. A lot of the young Selkirk guys haven't won anything. Me as a coach at Selkirk haven't won anything, so to get a victory last Sunday was great, especially the week before. But it's now how you deal with the pressure, I dare say, of a home support, and just hoping that the players stick to task and complete the basics like they done last Sunday, and we should have a chance.
A lot of youngsters involved in the squad, of course.
That's very exciting. We I don't know if it's a gamble. I mean, they've been training with us for the last 5-6 weeks, and I think they merited their place in selection. And the Sunday was the first time that they were able to be selected, because we said that they would stay with the youth club for their whole season. So they finished at Jed on Saturday, and we felt it was a great opportunity to bring them along on Sunday. And they stepped into that really well, and done very well. It was a great squad effort.
And one in particular, Findlay Whelan's player of the tournament.
He's got some pace. I mean, we didn't start them early on, and we struggled against the power bombs, to be honest, for the first half. And we put him on at half time along with Monroe, and that kind of changed the way, the selection for the rest of the day, and he actually earned starting on the wing for the rest of the tournament. And he played 9-10 minutes, and then we looked to move Callum out on the wing, but for what he offers, I mean, there's no substitute for pace, and he was on the end of a couple of great tries in the final on Saturday and Sunday, and I thought he was really good.
There's no one more experienced than you in Scottish Sevens. You've done it all. You've played. You've coached as well. What do you actually tell them? What do you bring to a team to tell them to get them over the line like they did last week?
Oh, look, I think we've seen something completely different. And we've probably not seen that. I mean, we got to 12-0 up, and I think we managed the final really well. We didn't take quick taps. We then decided to kick to the touchline. And it's about playing smart, and you're 12-0 up on the clock. There's no point running yourself into the ground, and it's about managing that. And I thought, Aaron McComb was probably at the front of that and making the decisions in that in the final. And I thought we were really streetwise in the final. And I think that's probably the best Selkirk I've played in a Sevens tournament under myself there on Sunday. And from now, the problem is it's the expectation. Supporters are coming down. I said, look, we don't need to do anything different. I thought our basic skill level was exceptional in the final. We held on the ball for the first 3 minutes and actually then scored off it. So you can imagine how hard that is for Melrose to defend for 3 minutes and then we score. So it's a real confidence boost and a great way to start the final. But I thought just the way we managed the final in particular, with using the penalties, kicking them a touch, our line-outs, our set piece was, everything was kind of on the money.
And great for the club as well to have this end of season bit of success.
Oh look, I mean it's been a tough season, don't get me wrong, it's been really hard for everybody, mainly through injuries. Obviously we've had a few kind of COVID outbreaks as well, and I mean it's great, that's kind of, now it's all about, you get momentum at the end of the season, now it's about building for next season and stuff, and people see that as well. So it's a great time, a great way to end the season, as you say, and it'd be fantastic to do well today and do well at Jed next week.
Scott White, always interesting to talk to him about sevens, and certainly his influence on the Selkirk team is there for all to see. Let's quickly have a look at the draw for tomorrow. Melrose against Musselburgh, Hawick against Curry, Jedforest have Biggar, Kelso against Boroughmuir, Peebles versus Edinburgh Accies, Selkirk v Highland, Gala against Berwick, and Langham against Watsonians. Now, the observant ones of you will realise that is a Borders versus kind of city outside the area format. It's always been like that. Again, it's quite an open competition, Dale.
For a Border City draw, I think that's probably as honest as you'll get. Jed and Selkirk have been separated in the draw, which is, going to form. Which is fine. And
I think they've been seeded, as always, there. So Melrose obviously would be one of the seeds as well, and Watsonians the other. So that's why those four are kept apart, and I have no problems with that.
Yeah, definitely. And Watsonians are a team as well that have they've been looking pretty good in the sevens, and perhaps difficult with Super 6, and they lose a lot of their good players. But Watsonians are a great team, current holders as well, so they'll be looking to try and retain that. But you look at the draw, there's a lot of interesting ties there. Even if you look at the city teams, Curry have shown up well, especially at Melrose. Biggar are a team which have been successful in the 15s so far this season. Obviously missing out in promotion as well, along with Gala, as Heriots went up from that one. But they've got a lot of good young players in there. I think they'll be guided by Craig Borthwick, who maybe is not a sevens exponent nowadays, but he's got a very good brain, he's got a very good drive in him as well. So the bigger guys will know what to do. And then Edinburgh Accies, they've got a good sevens heritage now in terms of Kings of the Sevens. They perhaps have outshone Watsonians and Boroughmuir and the Heriots in recent years. Really, really good advocates for the Kings of the Sevens from Edinburgh. Edinburgh Accies have been great servants over recent years, but you would certainly say on the balance of that, it's difficult to call. It's a Melrose Musselburgh. Musselburgh have got a few good players with James Ferguson and the likes. He picked up player of the tournament at Peebles at the beginning of all the way back in August.
Hearts and Balls, wasn't he?
Yeah, Hearts and Balls. So he turns out for Musselburgh. So there's going to be a lot of good sevens players on display. And I think this comes back to my point about a knockout draw. That's difficult to look at. It's difficult to figure out who's going to win each tie, because they're all really, really competitive there, to be fair. I think they're, on the balance of stuff, they're all difficult ties. So it'll be interesting to see who makes it through the first round.
And you mentioned Watsonians. Watsonians, the current holders, they've won the last three Kings of the Sevens titles. But of course, it's a completely different Watsonian squad. It's a young squad. We've got young Brodie Young, who's impressed me throughout the tournament. And I think as a 15s player as well, he's been identified by Scottish Rugby as another youngster to watch in the future. So hopefully we'll be able to see Brodie. But these are guys, and again, like Jedforest, Watsonians have got sevens running through the veins with the Mike Kerrs and Andrew Kerrs and all these people from the past, and you just look at the Jamie Blackwoods and the heritage that are there for Watsonians. They can only get better and better, and I think Watsonians, they're holders of the Macari Cup as well, which is the trophy that goes to the highest team in the Kings of the Sevens table from out with the Borders, and they're currently on 21. Edinburgh Accies are on 18. Now Curry can't make it, they're on 10, so even if they win, they'll end up 1 point short of Watsonians. But again, that's an incentive for a young Watsonians team there, that they could go away with silverware tomorrow. Yeah,
and I think the fact that they're young, I thought that's the great thing about the Kings of the Sevens. It allows that platform for these young guys to pit themselves against some talented players throughout Scotland, and it really tests your skill set, Sevens. Let's not get away from that. And it is a backs game mostly. You do have some back rows, and even Keith Melbourne, you get some second rows in there as well. But these are skillful players who are able to adapt to the game. But for these youngsters, it's a huge learning experience and a learning curve for them. And in the birth of Super 6, I think we almost need to accept it's going to take some time for the clubs to settle out, and that's for their job to do. But this is a great start for them, for Watsonians to try and continue to reach the heights that they were used to in Kings of the Sevens, because they were very, very successful. You know, players like Andrew Turnbull, these players that have came through and played for Watsonians and went on to represent their country. Colin Gregor, he was a Watsonian as well, so they've got a huge history in terms of sevens, but it gives them that platform to try and build again, go from what they were, what used to doing, and in Super 6 eventually it will even itself out, but this is the platform. Kings of the Sevens allows these youngsters to really put on a showcase. And
talking of youngsters, I had a text from Greg McLeod, the team manager of Hawick, and he said, we're sending probably the youngest Hawick team since the war. And he wasn't joking as well. You had Finn Douglas, you had Elliot Stanger, and a whole host of them. And it's good to see these people, because you look at the history of the Kings of the Sevens and beyond that, when it all started in the 19th century, Hawick dominates like they dominated the Border League. But in recent times, it's very hard to find, apart from their own tournament, Hawick grabbing many trophies. And it's surprising.
Yeah, I think these things come round in patches, and it's not their purple patch yet. And I think when you look back at Watsonians have had one, Melrose have certainly had one, but the success that they've had, Jed have always been there or thereabouts. But you look at teams like Kelso have got a huge history in sevens, but they've just not been able to sustain that. The landscape of rugby changes all the time. Communities change all the time. The one community which probably has changed the least, I would say, is Hawick. They've still managed to somehow retain a lot of their successful and most talented players. You look at Rory Hutton, for example. He perhaps could have went on to really great things in rugby, but his commitment to Hawick was unbelievable, and I think their time will come again. I don't think it'll be at Jed, but these youngsters that are coming through, you look at the success of their youth teams at the moment, the likes of Finn Douglas, he's a phenomenal player. He's a real player who's on the radar of a lot of people up at Murrayfield, and rightfully so. He's a really talented individual. But their time will come, and this is a great learning curve. You can't go into the Kings of the Sevens as a Hawick player and think you've got any sense of entitlement to think that you're going to be winning all the tournaments. You need to work hard for it, and Graham Hogg will be telling them exactly that. You look back at the videos and watch how much passion he played with. He represented this country for sevens as well, and they've got good guidance in there. And I feel that Hawick are, out of the recent changes in rugby, are going to be one of the biggest benefactors of it all, because I don't think a lot of people will look over the fence to play elsewhere other than Hawick, because winning the Premiership, I think, is their next goal. And these youngsters coming through, this will help them, because they'll get immersed in the club, they'll get used to the players, used to the coaching, used to the methods, and the success comes after that. And these youngsters will really enjoy the experience and the opportunity to pit themselves against some adults who have been there round the block, and they'll learn a few things.
And the Kings of the Sevens, a great showcase, great to turn up and see some stars of the future. And let's just mention another couple. Finlay Whelans of Selkirk, who won Player of the Tournament, and he was starting from the bench and still, managed to do that at Earlston. And also, of course, young Archie Pilcher, who's very much on the radar, and actually approached Melrose, I believe, to get involved with them. And we've seen 3 or 4 excellent tries from him, and what pace he's got. And out of all of the youngsters coming through, I think Archie reminds me more of Stuart Hogg than anyone.
Yeah, and that's what's great about sevens. It gives you space. There's nothing better than seeing a player with the ball in hand sidestepping somebody, and the defender looking like being at sea and falling over, and the guy's going showing a bit of pace, showing a bit of awareness and footwork. There's nothing better than seeing that. But there's a player, Munro Job, as well. He's a player that is very, very well thought of. There's a Celtic Youth Club coach, Mark Eason. He is, I think if I've heard his name once, I've heard it 1,000 times. But rightfully so, because they're a player that they're trying to elevate as well, and he's on the radar. So these young players, I don't think they will understand the opportunity that they've got, because I was once a young player who thought I had the world at my feet, and you would play sevens as a 17, 18-year-old. You were playing against people and you would have a few good points, but I perhaps never grasped it as much, because it was almost a sense that you were entitled to play Kings of the Sevens. There's not a lot of opportunities. There's players out there, to name one, Clark Young, who's finding playing time very difficult in the Selkirk team, and he's getting frustrated because he maybe feels he merits some more game time. But that is the nature of a small squad. You have to work hard to get in it, to get the opportunity to play in the big stages, because in terms of the Kings of the Sevens, out with Melrose, the finale at Jed is one of the biggest stages you're going to get in sevens.
Well, we had 87 tries scored at Philippoch at the weekend. I wonder if we'll get 100 tomorrow at the big event at Riverside Park. But of course, it was a Selkirk Jed final. Jed won that in the end. It was very close, 7-7 just before half-time. And then we had a very rare thing, a red card, which went to one of your mates, in fact, Scott McClimate.
Shock horror.
Have you spoken to him since then?
No, I've not spoken to him. I think he's in hiding. But I was hearing about it, and I was speaking to another one of the farmers up in the Yarrow Valley yesterday, and you know they don't come back and going forward at all, so they were putting the boot into Stoosh as well. So that's just rugby. He will be disappointed because that's an opportunity to really win your home sevens, and he'll be absolutely gutted. If I know Scott McClimate as well as I do, I think he'll be absolutely gutted that he let that opportunity pass him by.
Who are you going for? Let's put you on the spot.
I think it's difficult to look past Jed. I think Jed have had a difficult time of it this season. Winning 15s, they've had a change of coach. They've, had difficulty with injury, but they've really galvanised their team for sevens. I think that Selkirk will have a lot to say about that, as will Melrose. But if I'm going for I'd say it's going to be a Jed Selkirk final, and I think Jed will win it by maybe 3 scores.
Well, there we are. We will see what happens. Of course, you've put your neck on the line there, but it's going to be a great event anyway. But that's just about it for today. We'll be live on Borders Rugby Radio tomorrow from 3 p.m. at the Starrett Jedforest Sevens at Riverside Park. The radio coverage sponsored by the Mortgage Hub, who we're very grateful to, of course, and it's in association with TD9 Radio. The event itself begins at 1:30. We'll be on air at 3, and we're looking forward to it. But for now, from Dale Clancy and myself, Stuart Cameron, bye-bye for now.